All right, let's get this started. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ryan Brandt. I will be the moderator of today's webinar titled Your Path to Profitability with Cannabis. I'm a senior tax manager for Witham. I've been doing tax compliance for all of our firm's cannabis companies for over 5 years now. I specialize in IRC Section 280E and strategies to optimize tax savings. Today we have an exciting webinar. And there is the option to ask questions throughout, so feel free to type them in, and we're going to dedicate some time at the end of this session to discuss them. We will have 3 guests joining us who are on, you can see their faces here. They'll be joining us, and they have their own specialty in this field that we'll get to. So we have Chuck Miller, who is the CEO of Ingenex Energy, and we'll be discussing opportunities around energy-related projects and controlled environment growth solutions. We also have Carrie Milstein, who is a partner at Milstein Consulting, and we'll be discussing cultivation and site development and everything from grow methods to facility layout and construction management. Also featured on this webinar is my colleague, Martin Harsky, who is a principal at Witham, and we'll be discussing cost segregation studies and strategies around accelerating tax savings. So let's get right into it. Our first speaker is Chuck Miller. I'll give you a little bit of background about Chuck Miller. He's the CEO of Ingenex Energy. He has more than 25 years of energy efficiency, and renewable energy experience, along with project development and structured financing. Chuck has developed projects with multiple vertical markets, including healthcare, higher education, industrial and commercial, and agriculture. Prior to the launch of Ingenex, Chuck was tasked with deploying capital for the non-regulated energy division of Washington Gas, where he developed more than $150 million of projects over the course of 4 years. He has subsequently been heavily engaged in the indoor agricultural space, most recently facilitating a 2 megawatt, 900-ton combined heat and power plant for a licensed medical grower in Maryland, and has worked closely with leading MSOs in the facility construction for hundreds of thousands of square feet of canopy. Chuck, I'm happy to have you on this webinar, and I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Ryan, thanks a lot. Appreciate the intro. Good to be with everybody virtually today. Wanted to talk a little bit about Ingenex to start, and some exciting news. Most recently, we aligned ourselves strategically with KMB Design Group. So this is something new for us. I'm taking a role with KMB as the Senior Director of Energy Solutions, and we're excited to move forward with a very, very strong partner. Just quickly about Ingenex. Ingenex was formed as a group of technology and financial professionals focused on the development side of energy and energy efficiency related projects. Earlier this year, as I said before, we teamed with KMB because we realized very quickly we needed a much more robust engineering backstop. These projects that we're talking about here are very, very technically intense, and having a partner who's got good experience on renewable energy, on energy and energy solutions, and basic mechanical and electrical and plumbing design was really critical to being able to be successful. Not the least of which is that they're licensed in over 50 states, or in 50 states plus the Caribbean. So we can do this work anywhere in the world, or anywhere in the U.S. and the Caribbean anyway. The other thing that was important here is that as we move forward, we launched the CEA pod, or the C pod product. And as we're moving forward, we're going to be working also closely with MXA, Gen Plant, Brody Business Development, Fred Brody, and some other folks to kind of move our strategies forward. Go ahead to the next slide. I'm going to try and adjust my screen here so I can see it. Okay, so with a successful history of designing and deploying energy solutions, one of the things that has become very, very clear is that it is very critical for our customers to address time to market and quality and cost of goods sold. One of the things that we've kind of focused on working with these larger MSOs has been trying to address the nexus of these three elements. And one of the ways that we do that has been through a technology called combined heat and power, or CHP. I don't know if you're familiar with CHP, but combined heat and power basically is a technology mechanism that enables you to recover energy from power generation and deploy it into either heating or cooling. So it's a twofer. You get two for one. It's either a generator that produces hot water, or it's a boiler that produces electricity. The unique benefit is that by doing so, you can reduce your cost of goods sold, your cost of energy, which is 50% of your of the cost of a product produced, by nearly 35%. And if you look at energy as it relates to reheating when you're trying to remove moisture, then you can even reach levels of 50% of reduction. So being able to use combined heat and power is a critical approach. And one of the unique things that we've learned from working with these large MSOs is that how do we translate that technology into a time to market, to addressing time to market? So unequivocally, the issue of time to market was raised by all of our customers. But the second major issue was product quality, followed closely by cost of goods sold. To uniquely address this set of criteria, we launched the CPOD product to be able to deliver a fast start solution. And what it does is it takes all of the elements of a large scale facility grow using combined heat and power and encapsulates it in a modular market approach. So you can deliver this fast start solution using the same techniques that are used for custom design power and cooling solutions, provide a rapidly deployable modular solution, and then still bring this element of third-party financing into the mix. Next slide. So as an emerging entity, whether you are an MSO in a new market or a new licensee on your first grow, what are the keys to success? And one of the things I wanted to bring to this panel is, I've been working closely with large MSOs, with newly licensed operators, with people who are trying to submit applications to get into the business. And I've been doing this for about 7 years now. We started back with Washington Gas when I was deploying capital for them into the cannabis space, moved on to Pannoni and now KMB. And the questions and the answers are very, very repetitive. They all face the same issues. And one of the key things that I observed is that, in order to be successful, you have to have a solid plan with a vision of the future. Cheap and dirty now means slow and expensive later. It's just, a common problem that many folks have. And you have to understand the difference between first cost and life cycle costs. Some first cost decisions will prevent you from achieving the quality, the yield, or even the cost of goods sold that you're looking for, because the key nexus of energy, moisture, nutrients, and cost really have an impact, and those decisions have to be kind of well thought early on in the process. Some systems that are out there, aren't even capable of addressing your needs, right? So, the goal is to produce the highest quality and highest yield product, right? More water and more light means more energy. It means greater yield. But some systems that you choose early on for first cost decisions can't address those. For example, package units can't remove the water that is input into a grow chamber if you're having a high watering rate. If you're up above 0.75 or 1 gallon per plant per day, it's very, very difficult for those systems to remove. So the answer then became, okay, well, let's add in a desiccant dehumidification unit. Well, those desiccant dehumidification units, while great at removing moisture, require an immense amount of energy to regenerate the medium to be able to remove that moisture. So again, you're kind of squeezing one end of a bubble versus the other. If you're using the wrong solution, you're going to end up spending more on energy. And when you look at over the life cycle of your facility, that can be very, very penalizing. Understand as markets emerge, being quick to market gets market share, but having a higher quality product is what is going to keep you there. And understanding your business plan and how it intersects with your technology plan is critical, right? If you're building to flip, similar in a commercial real estate example, if you're building to flip, well, then you can do lower first cost approaches and make quality and yield somebody else's problem. But if you're building to last, or if you're building to get acquired by an MSO or a pharmaceutical company or a beverage company in the future, who are looking at almost GMP quality standards for the design and construction of their facilities, you have to make the right decisions up front, because you can't cheaply or inexpensively retrofit your facilities at a later date. So understand how your strategy is going to address your market, and also understand where your market is. If you're trying to produce a high quality flower, you need a high quality environment. If what you're producing is really targeted at edibles or gummies or extracts, that extract market can have a little less of a quality perspective, because you're filtering things out in the production process. So understand your market and how your cultivation strategy fits into it. And then technologies and costs vary based on that cultivation strategy. So again, understand that if you're trying to produce a high quality product, you have to create a very high quality environment that has very, very tight controls. Under the NGenix approach, what we've done is we've kind of flipped the script with these modular environments. We're saying, okay, in order to produce a quality environment, this is the energy that it's going to take. And then based on your watering rates, you can either back that down or ramp that up and scale your facility in a fast start approach. So the fast start approach basically says, we know how much water it takes, how much energy goes into a room at these watering and nutrient rates. If you have a higher nutrient rate, you're going to need more energy to remove it. If you have a lower energy rate, you have the same power plant to be able to do it, but now you can add more pods to it. So basically, if you're at a 1.5 gallon watering rate, you can use 6 pods. If you're at a 0.75 gallon watering rate, you can use 12 pods. I'm going to expand that production. But again, it's going to reduce the size and the yield of your facility on a per plant basis, and you end up with a higher volume product. So again, all of these things, understand that the relationship between your quality, your cost, and your energy intensity are all very, very closely interrelated. Next slide. So how do you get to where you want to go faster, right? How do you accelerate the deliverables? One key thing to understand is, where your time is spent. More time spent on the front end of a process, on a project, is going to yield a much greater return. But you have to get to these decisions quickly. Otherwise, you'll end up in, analysis paralysis, right? You just keep going over and over and over the decisions, trying to fine tune it. The best thing you can do is make a decision and move forward, and then address it as you go on. But understand that what you're building is not a warehouse. People, treat these things as if they were, simple warehouses, and it's not. It's a pharmaceutical process. So find people who understand your business plan and understand your production strategies that you can tie them to. Don't just hire contractors and expect them to know what you need, right? Most contractors who coming in, and this is not a dig on contractors, but if what you're used to is deploying rooftop units or package systems, well, if all you have is a hammer, everything that you see is a nail, right? I mean, they're going to try and apply that to a situation which may or may not be the right solution. And you can't really expect them to understand the nuances of your business unless they've been working in that space. Look at the market holistically, including all of the players competing for your product, and understand where you fit and how you're going to beat them. Your technology decisions can either make or break that. If you're trying to be the high quality, high cost product, and you have a facility that can't meet those needs, or can't meet it cost effectively because you're consuming way too much energy as compared to your competition, that's going to be an issue in your overall strategy. So it's easier to produce lower quality product from a higher quality facility than the other way around. My suggestion will be, if you're going to do this, give yourself the flexibility of making good decisions that have flexibility at the start and enable you to move forward. One of the key messages that you can take away from this is that package systems versus chilled water systems are not the same approach. A chilled water system versus a package unit can give you a much more flexible approach to the market, much tighter controls, and much greater capability to remove moisture if you want to experiment with watering rates and nutrient rates and lights and durations, with increasing the yield of your product. And then finally, the biggest point, obviously, is leveraging and managing your cash flow. As I said earlier in the presentation, Ngenix and KMB formed a strategic alliance earlier this year with Scale Microgrid Solutions. Scale Microgrid Solutions is one of the leading providers of energy and microgrid solutions in the market today. They have an alliance or a partnership with Warburg Pincus, and they're deploying $300 million of capital into the space, including the cannabis space, as we speak. They're a very, very good source of expertise and technology, and not the least of which capital for us. And in these third-party ownership structures, it brings a lot of flexibility to what you can deliver to a client. So, the takeaway here, the key takeaway here is, Ngenix and KMB can get you started fast and can get you on the right path to building out that facility in an overall financially sound and flexible manner. I think that's the last slide.
Yep. All right, thanks, Chuck. A lot of good stuff there. I'm going to turn it over to our second speaker now. His name is Cary Milstein. He's a visionary entrepreneur with 30 years experience in business development and 7 years in cannabis concentration. Mr. Milstein is experienced with project facility design for a variety of cultivation methods, processing, retail planning, construction management, and risk management. As a founding partner in Lead Creative Force, Mr. Milstein secured winning applications in Maryland for cultivation and dispensary operations and created a partnership with an existing processing facility to manufacture Verano branded products. Additional accomplishments for Cary include winning 3 energy grants totaling over $2.75 million, securing a $10 million complex combined heat and power development project at the Jessup Verano facility. He served on the Verano board of directors for 4 years during a period of rapid expansion to become a highly net profitable MSO, vertical in 14 states. He also helped lead the company to a $2.88 billion valuation at the time of the reverse takeover in February of 2021. So with that said, take it away, Cary.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate everybody's time today. And like Ryan might have said, we're going to have questions at the end. So go ahead and write your questions in and send them up, or just hold them for the end. What I want to talk about today is, I also don't know exactly everyone's situation of the attendees here. So we're going to go through this kind of from a basic standpoint, and any kind of specific questions you might have, we'll try and address later. But anyway, the first thing I wanted to get into with site development is licensing caps and limitations that you may or may not have on the license you're applying for, or you've recently won, or that you already won and control. License caps come in many sorts of types. One can be a plant count, so you're limited to the number of plants you can have in the facility. Some are a square foot of canopy, so your canopy is measured, whether it's single tier, double tier, or triple tier. You would have to calculate that canopy, and whatever limits your license state has applied to you, you have to stay within those license caps. We need to design a facility to maximize your output and minimize your cost. So you have to stay completely aware of those limitations that you're designing towards. The other key aspect of site development comes in how you plan on growing. Some folks grow outside. If you're in a desert-like environment, you can grow outside. It's not one I'm very familiar with, because I came from the East Coast, and we get snow and hot, humid summers, and it's not a very good, healthy environment for growing plants outside, especially when you're limited in any kind of crop supporting agents you can apply for pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, or enhancement. So your grow method it can be indoor grow is a greenhouse, a light deprivation greenhouse, or a high environmentally controlled indoor grow that provides all the light and environmental controls for the grow rooms themselves. This is the one that I've been most experienced with and familiar with, and have had more consistent output, right? Because we're trying to develop a resource pipeline that is consistent year round. And to have a grow method that supports that is critical, in my opinion. Facility layout is the next thing, where you want to have a good flow of work. You can have an efficient flow where the plants go from clone to pre-veg to veg to flower to harvest to your curing and packaging places or packaging operations, but everything needs to move in an organized fashion. You don't want your staff running like ants all over the whole facility and crashing into each other in the corridors. So you have to have a good layout that maximizes whatever license cap and light and grow method you have. So the facility layout is key. Once we get a facility layout and the grow method and the license caps, you can begin to understand what your total utility costs can be projected to be. So we have to project the demand on the utilities. The electric, the gas, and the water are critical. So, and we can't do a solid utility demand analysis without understanding the facility, the grow method, and the license cap that you're shooting for. So part of what we would do is, once we lay out that draft facility, we can sit down and look at the equipment that's needed to support that, and start the next point, which is the cost review. So nobody has, or very few of us have enough money to get this thing done right out of pocket. These are not like building a house that you can find a mortgage company for. Very few angel investors are willing to put up tens of millions of dollars without having a huge chunk of equity in your operation. So how you can manage the cost and plan on those costs and do things where you're preserving as much of that initial equity is going to help you later on with what I talk about as an exit. So the idea of fundraising intelligently, leveraging grants, rebates, energy commitment letters or contracts for energy commitment, and borrowing money as debt is far superior, in my opinion, than selling equity, which also we do. Everyone sells equity, but you have to use a combined approach to all those fundraising methods to really help you get to a good, strong place for your exit. Construction management is chaos, right? So anybody who's built a simple retail store or an office or something, you know the basics. But when you start to deal with increasingly strong demands of power and HVAC, lots of dehumidification, cooling, we never really quite understood the cooling demands. And in Maryland, when you're trying to run air conditioning in a facility in the middle of the winter when it's 20 degrees outside, a lot of air conditioning units just aren't set up for that. They're not. But in the cultivation business, you have to be able to run 24/7, day and night, regardless of season. And the construction planning and management of how you accomplish all of that is critical. And you need to spend time to think about that well ahead of construction startup. The last thing in this slide is, after the construction is completed, you need a good, successful operational startup. So we call that a commissioning, where the HVAC, the fertigation systems, the electric systems are all started up, tested, and make sure from the manufacturers and the engineers who were designing the facility are all operating within the parameters that you set out in your plans. So you need a really strong startup and warranty and operational sort of handoff from the construction team to your operational team, and that will help you to have a good, successful launch. Ryan, would you put up the next slide, please? Okay, I shifted. Oh, is that the last slide or the second slide? Oh, here, that's the last slide. So one slide up. You had it.
This is it right here.
Okay. Beginning with the end in mind, part of the planning process when we're budgeting and doing all this layout of the facility, all of this impacts your pro forma. So your canopy size, the amount of plants you're going to have, the number of cycle rotations you're going to be able to harvest in a year, how you build this continuous, perpetual resource pipeline is going to affect your pro forma. And the pro forma, we always second guess the pro forma. You don't want to have too aggressive a pro forma, and you don't want to have too weak a pro forma. You have to be able to work with your accounting professionals and your designers to say, this is the expected output. Here's our current wholesale market price for pounds of cannabis. And we believe this facility will be able to generate X amount of dollars on a continuous basis once we get fully operational. That will help you to secure whatever mix or means of financing you want to get in your business. I had to avoid a lot of sharks, and I'm sure a lot of you see sharks out there. The problem with sharks is they don't identify themselves as, hey, I'm trying to kill you or eat you or take your business. So they present themselves as friendly angel investors or other advisors or operators, but they understand probably better than you understand whatever money or problem they're helping you solve at the moment is not going to be the end of the road. So you need to make sure that you build into your pro forma and into your financing models how you retain control of your business. Control is key. So the equity and the control need to be understood and managed from the beginning. Speed to market. These markets evolve quickly, but they used to evolve a little less quickly. What's interesting is now how fast they actually move up to 100,000 plus patients in a given market. So I'm not quite sure where all of you are looking to either expand or start up operations, but I drew a lot of experience from the Colorado market when I was looking at Maryland and trying to design these pro formas and actually figure out where I thought the market was going to be and how profitable everything was going to be. But the early to market gets the better price and the better products. So you have to understand what it is you're trying to solve for and how quickly you can get there so that when the market does get saturated, because eventually there's going to be dozens more licenses and infinite supply, just like there is in just about every commodity in the United States. You need to be able to survive the commoditization of cannabis. So once the supply outstrips the demand, the price is going to tumble. And if you're not there early, and if you haven't planned that commoditization into your build and into your facility, you're going to be really hurting, and you'll be in a position that takes a lot of money and time to sort of correct, which isn't good for anyone except your competitors. EBITDA. Very few folks take this number quite seriously. We all think that winning a cannabis license is essentially like winning a lottery ticket. Nobody who wins a lottery ticket has to lay out more than $1 or $2 to get the lottery ticket. And the chances of winning are extremely rare. When you win a cannabis license, I think the chances are less rare, but a heck of a lot more costly. You don't get to become operational and have that eventual hopeful exit that you're dreaming of until you're running a demonstrated, profitable, continuously harvesting, perpetually harvesting resource market. And then you can bank on that. But you have to know 280E rules are onerous I think I look forward to the day when they're all gone. They were designed for a time not that we're presently in. They were designed for a time like in the 70s and 80s when drug dealers had taken over Miami. The problem now is you must make your business profitable, because in the end, a cannabis business is just like any other business. If you're not making profit, you're not having a good business. So that's that. Last slide, Martin. It might be the one before. Okay. So when I got into this several years, about 7 years ago, we were in that mental sort of whatever Chuck said, mental exercise, where my head was one of the biggest things I had to get past. And I was worrying early and often about too many things. And it kind of keeps you from sleeping. It keeps you from making good decisions. So you have to be able to protect your physical health, keep your sleep reasonable. You know, you can't do this with no sleep. If you're expected to make good analytical business decisions and work interactively with your advisory and supporting and construction and design team, you can't be exhausted, and you have to protect your physical and mental health. Experienced advisors, very few of us have been through this. None of us have been through this, you know, extensively. I've had a one complete run, but let me tell you, the bumps and twists and turns in the road were extreme. So you need partners that are rock solid and that you can trust. And that's harder to find than it sounds. You need advisors like the folks on this panel, or like many other out there who are not sharks, who are honestly trying to improve the outcomes for the patients in the US and for the investors, right? So you need to have people that understand what you're trying to do, how the confusion and chaos is going to progress, and help you get through these points where you really are up against the wall. Cash needs are some of the biggest problems we all run into. In most businesses, whatever you think you're going to need for money, you pretty much can make a safe bet you're going to need double. I've never seen an organization that had too much cash. Never. So when you see these cannabis businesses starting up, you know they're expensive, you know what the budget is going to be, and you have to be able to have a big enough cushion to sustain any sort of punishment that you take along the way, because running out of money and having, you know, your subs and your contractors or your grow team walk off is not a good place to be when you're looking for that perpetual pipeline of resources to keep flowing. Timing of your purchases can help with those cash needs. If you need 2,000 lights for your 30,000 foot facility or 50,000 foot facility, you might not need all 30,000 lights or 2,000 lights on day one. So if you're able to time out some of those big purchases or make delivery contracts that are timed out, that can help you manage that cash flow. Everyone always said I was a serial entrepreneur, and I never really understood what it meant. I have a lot of nasty jokes that I won't share with you now, but this is an entrepreneur's dream. Cannabis is an entrepreneur's dream. Every day you wake up, you're solving new problems. It's a constantly evolving landscape, both from the compliance standpoint, the competitive landscape, and all the trials and tribulations that go on with managing a facility and keeping that perpetual harvest going, those live plants going in a diverse and top artisanal quality, is a challenge, I think, that's beyond most of us, including me. So we have to put a team in place to help the entrepreneurs realize that dream. And the dream is the last point. You need to always be planning for your exit. You're not going to be in this business forever. You have to set it up so that your taxes, your exit, your operational costs, and your profit are all realized according to the plan that you set out ahead of time, or that you make adjustments along the way. But if you're not planning for a successful exit, then you're sort of just bouncing around. And I think that the exit it is part of everyone's, or should be part of everyone's plan into getting into this business. That's what I got for right now. I think that's it for my slides, and thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. Great stuff there. Okay, so I'm going to jump into our third speaker, who I've personally had the pleasure of working with over the past 5 years. His name is Martin Harsky. He has more than 38 years of expertise in cost segregation and appraisal-related industries. He specializes in providing cost segregation services for tax planning purposes to a variety of clients across the United States. His expertise in performing cost segregation studies is in many industries and property types, including banking and medical buildings, apartments, hotels and resorts, and cannabis cultivation facilities. Martin has previously consulted with numerous Fortune 500 companies. Hey, Martin, if you're there, you want to bring us through the world of cost segregation studies?
Sure. Afternoon, everybody. As Ryan said, I'm a principal here at Witham. Actually, I have 42 years of now doing cost segregation studies since January 1980. So with that being said, Ryan, let's get right into it. Let's go to the next slide here, please. And talk about a little bit about what is cost seg and how it all fits in together with this, what we're talking about here today. So as everybody's been talking about is the 280E issue. So as you see here, no deduction is allowed or credit is allowed for any amount paid for or incurred during the taxable year in carrying on the trade or business, because again, it's consisting of trafficking and controlled substance. This by and large means that the cannabis business, may not deduct any necessary costs other than the cost of goods sold in computing gross income for federal income tax purposes. But again, not to worry, this is where understanding what cost of goods sold are and how they relate to your business and how cost segregation comes into play. Ryan, next one, please. So understanding cost of goods sold, right here, there's a court case out there for Californians helping to alleviate medical problems versus the IRS commissioner. This was happening back in 2007. So the government did acknowledge that 280E does not prohibit a taxpayer from claiming cost of goods sold. So cost of goods sold are at the heart of all cannabis related businesses, as it's one of the key factors in helping to reduce your taxable income. So this kind of goes back to what Chuck was talking about and Carrie was talking about with respect to some of the components of the building. So here are just a few examples of the costs that are directly related to cost of goods sold. The building, the internal structures related to growing and the cultivation process, any electrical, plumbing, HVAC components related to the growing and cultivation process. And again, that goes back to what Carrie was talking about and Chuck was talking about, where you have high energy along with all the HVAC components and plumbing components that help you to grow and cultivate all your product. So these components right here are all directly related to your cost of goods sold. Thereby, you can take the depreciation on these assets and also then get your bonus depreciation. And right now, with respect to bonus depreciation, it's 100% bonus depreciation through the end of this year. So my suggestion is if you have any buildings being built, try to get them into completion by the end of this year, 2022. Now, don't fret, because in 2023, it does drop down to 80%. You still get bonus depreciation, but it's going to drop down to 80% of these assets. The other ones are grow lights and other machinery equipment related to your growing and cultivation process. Ryan? So what is cost segregation? Cost segregation is truly a strategic tax savings tool that increases your cash flow by accelerating your depreciation deductions and thereby deferring your federal and state income taxes. So Looks like we have a double one there, but go to the next one, please, Ryan. So the primary goal of cost segregation is to identify, segregate, and reclassify all the various components of your construction, purchase of a building, remodel, or whatever you're doing to the building, away from a 39-year tax life down to a shorter tax life, i.e. 5, 7, and 15. Now, because you're in the growing and cultivation, your business then would be classified as agricultural, which would then get you a 7-year tax life. So recent tax law changes have given cost seg a boost in the form of increasing bonus depreciation from 50% up to 100%, which we are currently in from 2018 through the end of 2022. So the assets that are eligible for bonus depreciation are any 5-year life, 7-year life, or 15-year life assets. So let's just say you construct a $40 million facility. Typically, through a cost seg study, we can identify approximately anywhere 20 to 50% of the total project costs into the shorter depreciable tax lives, which means that anywhere from $8 million to $20 million of your project costs would be eligible under the 100% bonus depreciation right now. And of course, what this is going to do is help to offset your income taxes. Ryan? So when should you begin? The ideal time of cost seg study is when plans are drafted. And again, this goes back to what Terry was talking about, property layout, construction management, architectural design. So that's the time you really want to get somebody involved with the cost segregation process so that they can help understand and put together projections for what the potential benefits are going to be here. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that you built a facility 3 years ago and you never did a cost seg. Well, don't worry. The IRS allows you to go backwards and to restate your and changing your accounting method and pick up all that understated depreciation expense from prior tax years and bring it onto your current tax return without amending your prior tax returns. So this is a blessing from the IRS. Ryan? So remember, go ahead. So remember, a dollar earned today is better than a dollar earned tomorrow. Or as Wimpy used to say, I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for our hamburger today. So that's just to keep you up on the 30,000 foot level. One more thing I do want to talk about is where we're talking about high energy with respect to your HVAC, lighting, and everything else. There is a side product that is related to segregation, which is code section 179D. It's an energy tax deduction credit that you can get for your type of facilities. So that's something else that we provide with them to help you to reduce these costs. That's it.
Hey, Ryan, before we get into the questions with everybody, that was an interesting point I was going to ask during the session. Since energy, literally electricity, is nearly 50% of the cost of goods sold, right? It's for the cannabis industry, it's the second highest cost next to labor. From an operations perspective, how are consumables treated, like electricity, like other consumables that would be used as in the production of the product? Martin?
Now, was that directed toward me, Chuck?
Yeah.
I think it's more about
So again,
the component, right? Not the actual,
correct.
the production of that component. So it'd be a capital expenditure. Let's say you buy a bunch of lights for $100,000. The purchase price of the lights is the depreciation, is where you're gonna get the depreciation benefit from.
Correct. That's the benefit side of it. That's your depreciable basis. So again, if you're buying $200,000 to $300,000 worth of grow lights, all the grow lights, again, that's your basis for that depreciation factor. And again, since it's related to cost of goods sold, those lights will qualify also then for bonus depreciation. But it goes a step further backwards. You have all the electrical hookups to the grow lights, all the conduit wiring, the junction boxes, the panel boards, the circuit breakers, all those components related to that will also qualify under the cost of goods sold and bonus depreciation.
But what was that you were just referring to about an energy credit for the energy itself?
There are three things under code section 179D that you can get up to $1.80 a square foot energy tax deduction against the cost of your construction costs. In other words, again, if I have lighting and I spend $300,000 of lighting, if these are high energy efficient lights, then you can potentially get 60 cents a square foot against the cost of your building and then deduct it against the light. So again, if I have a 50,000 square foot facility and my lights qualify for the 60 cents a square foot, I can get a $30,000 deduction against my light fixtures. So again, if I paid $300,000 worth of light, you can get a deduction against those lights of that cost. And it's with the HVAC or other building envelope, the roofing, the building envelope. Those are all costs that could potentially qualify for the 179D energy deduction, which again goes hand in hand with the cost segregation.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Ryan. You go ahead. You can wrap it up now.
Okay, yeah, so I got a couple questions that came in here. This one's for Carrie. What was the biggest challenge you had to face and overcome? Pretty general question, but love to hear that.
I kind of stated it earlier. The biggest challenge I had to overcome was pretty much myself. You know, I'm nervous all the time. I would stay up at night. I could not sleep. It was really the hardest thing for me was trying to sleep so that I could get up the next morning and make decisions, or at least be available to make decisions. When I started, there were less experienced people out there, and to find the good, reliable partners and the good advisors, Chuck wasn't around when I was getting started, or he was, but he was working with Washington Gas. So we met each other a long time ago, and the project that they're talking about is the Verano project that we're doing a 2 megawatt power project on. But I have to tell you, that project took years to get complete, to get started. So you need to be able to get out of your head. You need to be able to think these things through, and you need to have good advisors. So that's the most difficult thing, was just myself. I had to get out of my own way.
Thanks, Carrie. Here's a question that came in for Chuck. What's more important, quality, time to market, or cost of goods sold?
That's a good question. The answer is yes. You know, I don't know if you can differentiate between any of those components. And again, it goes back to, you know, what your overarching strategy is, right? If time to market is going to get you there, quality of product is going to keep you there. So in the early stages of your decision making, you know, you need to kind of design, as Carrie says, with the end in mind. What is your goal? If you're planning on getting out of the business in 2 years and hoping to flip, you want to build something quick and cheap, and the issues that go along with that become somebody else's problem. But if you, as Carrie also stated, need to have a viable, profitable operating business, then you really need to make decisions that are going to enable you to be successful and have a high quality product at a fair cost of goods sold in a reasonable amount of time. It's a very difficult equation to solve, and they all need to be addressed equally. And I think, you know, bringing in the right partners, understanding how you're going to maximize the technologies for the solutions that you're providing, and understanding how those selections are going to impact your pro forma and what capabilities you have to deduct revenue or to, for deductions and to maximize your profitability. There's no way to overstate, that all of these things are intricately tied together.
Thanks, John. More here. What types of components qualify for bonus depreciation? That'd be Martin. Martin, you still there?
Yes,
So what kind of
I'm
components?
still here.
Yeah, what kind of components qualify for bonus depreciation?
Typically, it would be components that are directly related to the process. Not only that, for again, your watering system, the humidifiers, the HVAC, the air conditioning that's directly related to the process, the growing process. Now, HVAC that's inside of the office area would not qualify because that's there for the normal operation and maintenance and creature comfort of your building. So those type of components would not qualify for that bonus depreciation. Other components would be, again, if you have computer systems, again, the electrical hookups to the computer systems. Other types of components would be, outside the building, if you have a parking lot, asphalt paving, these type of things would qualify. But a lot of times what happens when the general contractor is building the building and they put together a monthly draw request, a schedule of values to the bank or so on who's paying the bill, they generally will put all of the costs together, one line item called electrical, $800,000 or whatever the cost is, plumbing, the same thing, the HVA, same thing. This is where we go back in based upon our experience with our engineers, and we take the blueprints and we physically estimate the cost of all the components that make up your total project cost and break them out into the appropriate categories that will get you the 5-year, 7 or 15-year life assets versus say 39-year.
Hey, Ryan, I want to add to that, when we're talking about the potential of using third-party financing, one of the things that attracts investors to this space is that they receive all of the benefits, that Martin is talking about, albeit in a less convoluted manner, right? When we put in that 2 megawatt facility outside of the grow facility in Maryland, everything that was in there is a depreciable asset. Everything, it was all dedicated to generating power and delivering power to that customer. And then coupled with that is other financial incentives that are available to you either as an owner or to the third party as an owner that buy down the investment. So if you're looking at a multi-million-dollar investment, the project that Kerry had talked about where he got over $2.3 million or $2.6 million in grant money, that's free money. That's free money that doesn't chew into your equity, that doesn't add to your debt, that doesn't add to your debt covenants. It's free money. Combined heat and power in and of itself still gets a federal tax, an investment tax credit of 10%. So 10% of the total amount could be written off by a third-party investor. I don't think that benefit attributes to cannabis, the market directly if they're the owner, but that 10% is a significant amount of money. Then you have state incentives. In Maryland, MEA is giving up to $650,000 for combined heat and power projects. And then utility incentives. The utility was giving up to $2 million for combined heat and power. This CHP project is a significant benefit because you can buy down that asset, which actually then buys down your cost of power. The way that investors look at this is they pay it back on a cost per kW basis. So if the system is put in, is actually generating at a cost below market to begin with, and then we're buying down that asset with free money, it further drives down that cost per kW. So when you look at yourself 5 years in the future and you're competing in a market where the price of the product has decreased because of the infiltration of all of these other competitors in the market, you now have a lower cost of goods sold because your energy cost is lower and you leverage that free money. And then the final pitch I want to make on this is that if you look at the CEA pod that we're talking about, everything in that is a depreciable asset. It is the entire thing has been constructed in a way that when you drop it on site, it is fully depreciable because every component of it is part of your cost of goods sold. So, as we look at these types of things and see how they all fit together, the vision to see all the pieces and parts and how they play into your EBITDA really becomes, an issue where the folks on this panel and people with experience like Carrie can help guide you down that path.
One thing I do want to bring back up real quick from the bonus depreciation aspect, for federal purposes, these assets do qualify for the 100% bonus depreciation. However, for state purposes, it does not qualify. The majority of the states, I will probably say somewhere in the range of 42 to 45 states in the country, have decoupled from bonus depreciation, which means then you have to add back the 100% bonus depreciation you took for federal and add it back into for your state purposes. Now, the good side of that is you still get depreciation. So you would get the 5-year life, 7-year life, 15-year life, and the 39-year life. So you just have to be aware of that you just can't say, for argument's sake, Chuck's CHP is qualified 100% for bonus depreciation per se. However, for state purposes, you would have to depreciate that asset. So again, when you're looking at that, that's why the benefit of having a cost seg study done properly helps you out, not only from a federal standpoint, but also from the state standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question here, Marty, for you. You mentioned the $180 per square foot under the 179D. I think your example used 60 cents per square foot.
For each leg, correct.
So
there's
is
3 legs. There's.
Oh,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, there's 3 legs.
There's 3 legs, 60 cents each. The building envelope, which would be your roofing, insulation, windows, that's one part of it. The other part would be high energy efficient HVAC systems. That's the other 60 cents. And then the last one would be the lighting. Has to be LED style lighting and everything else. So that's something we would look at as part of what we're doing up front with the cost segregation and hand in hand, thereby giving you potentially up to $1.80 a square foot deduction.
Yeah. Here's a question for you, Chuck. I'm kind of interested to know the answer as well. How does the fast start approach transition to a traditional grow?
Another good question. So if you're going down this fast start, right? The reason you go down the fast start is to get to revenue quickly, right? If you look at a traditional approach, building out a 50,000 or 100,000 square foot facility, there's a number of different things that have significant long lead impact, right? Just getting power to you could be a 12 to 18 month scenario, depending on the utility that you're working with and how friendly they are and how comfortable they are bringing power to your facility. Some of these facilities can consume upwards of 6 or 7 megawatts of power, and usually they end up in areas that are designated for cannabis grow that have insufficient electrical infrastructure to support that type of that type of operation. So there's a lot of things that are going to impact your ability to grow a facility out. By going down the fast start approach, these are standalone systems. They basically don't require an interconnect. If you were to just drop them in a parking lot and connect gas to them, they could up and start producing product. But the beauty of it is that we've leveraged the combined heat and power approach that is traditionally used in larger scale facilities in a small scale operation. The assets themselves can expand. So if you have a 600 kW engine and a 200-ton absorption chiller, that can add to your overall facility once your facility is being built out. the assets themselves can be repurposed. The grow chambers themselves, it depends on your location. In some areas, they require that once your full facility is up and running, you have to abandon the temporary grow facilities. In other areas, you may be able to leverage those temporary grow facilities and continue to use them for veg or clone or some other aspect while you're using the full facility for flower. It all depends on the regulatory environment, but the approach on the Fast Start has been to enable you to reclaim and reuse the assets that you spent in as much as possible. The very least of which is you can just take the whole thing and move it into an open space inside your facility and call that permanent grow. So there is a number of different approaches to do it. And what we try and do is, optimize the flexibility of the solution.
And I think the last question here, this is probably a general question again for anybody. What's a single piece of advice that you would offer to someone getting started in this business?
Don't is not the answer, Kerry.
That's exactly what I was thinking. No, my single piece of advice would be manage your own expectations. Everybody thinks like they won the lottery and their license value and their plan value is phenomenal. And until you really see experienced operators or funders of these businesses sort of tamp down your exuberance, you need to have a good level head and good advisors to make good decisions, because most of us didn't have a lot of experience at this to begin with. We might have had tremendous experience at developing retail commercial buildings or hotels or restaurants or whatever you've been doing. How that experience translates into cannabis is not certain, but that's the biggest caution I would make for folks is temper their exuberance and create good relationships to help them get through all the chaos.
Mine would be the 7 Ps, right? Proper planning prevents blank poor performance. It's if you begin with the end in mind, understand where you want to go. Nobody gets where they're going without a map. You can stray off course. You can wander around if you want, but you got to have a plan to get from A to Z. And if you don't do that early on in the process and tie your business strategy, your cultivation strategy, and your technology strategy together, it becomes a much more longer path.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's one more question here. This one's probably for you, Chuck. What other advantages can you get using CHP? Mentioned CHP.
So, CHP as a whole is a more energy efficient solution. It's not just applied to the cannabis space. We're using it in data centers. We're using it in commercial real estate. We're using it in higher ed and healthcare. It is an energy efficient technology that is widely used and has been since the late 70s. As it applies to cannabis, it is uniquely qualified as a technology similar to data centers because the thermal profile of both data centers and cannabis facilities is so intense, right? You're 24/7, 365. You're consuming power, and in this instance, you're adding moisture and removing it through cooling. Whereas in a data center, they're just adding heat through IT and removing it through cooling. But having that constant load is, extremely extremely applicable for the CHP approach. And as a result, it reduces your total consumption by, over 35%, in most cases, 50% if you're doing reheat. And from a sustainability perspective, if you look at combined heat and power and compare it to the traditional approach, using power from the grid versus and using power from a grid and perhaps an on-site boiler, the efficiencies of those systems are nowhere near the total system efficiency when you look at it from a site to source perspective, right? most people think of electricity as something that comes out of the wall socket. Well, let's expand that a little further. It's something that comes out of a power plant, potentially hundreds of miles away. So when that unit of fuel goes into the power plant, whatever it might be, whether it's coal, whether it's natural gas, whether it's nuclear, whether it's renewable, that unit of energy gets transported to the end user. And in that transportation, they have line losses, heat losses that consume almost as much as 70% of the energy that went in the first place. So when you put a unit of energy into a power plant, by the time you take it out of the wall socket, it's only at 30 to 40% of what it was when it went in. So when you want to talk about sustainability, true sustainability, and you look at it from site to source, generating your power on site using a natural gas immediately reduces your carbon footprint by over 50%. And then supplementing that with other renewable technologies like solar, like battery storage, you can create a net zero operating facility that is going to be beneficial not only to the customer but to the environment as a whole.
All right, Chuck. Any other questions out there or comments from the panelists? If not, go ahead.
Ryan, I'm seeing some questions from panelists in here. I don't know if these came in, if you're seeing them. There was one here about, do we believe that a cannabis business is located in a QOZ? I think that's a qualified opportunity zone. Would it qualify for the 10-year exclusion?
Have you seen that, Carrie, in the business? Just opportunity zones? I haven't really come across it too much. I believe they still, they're still able to have the deferral of the QOZ zone, but
I'm not exactly familiar. It's more of an accounting question for you or Martin, and I think Martin had to jump. So we might have to get back to whoever asked that question.
I hear Steven's information. I can get back to him in a separate front.
There are other benefits, though, that I've seen in opportunity zones that are giving some deferred, either deferred expenses or incentives. Like, for example, Carrie, the project that we're looking at right now is actually got that opportunity zone benefit of a utility incentive of up to 50% on their electric rate for the first 5 years for creation of jobs in that specific area. And these things exist in almost every state where they're trying to locate facilities in areas to create jobs and associated with job creation. I don't know about the exclusion, the tax exclusions, but there are other significant incentives that exist in QOZs.
Oh yeah, I'm seeing these questions now. How is the carbon footprint of these systems being considered?
So there are a number of different things that are going on a state-by-state basis. Some states, some people are actually, it's more, I wouldn't say it's optics, but investors who are investing in facilities have certain goals, and those who have a sustainability criteria as part of their goal are trying to find the most efficient ways of doing this. They're using, obviously they're using LED lights, they're using efficient pumping systems, they're trying to reclaim water and use as little water as possible. All of those things are kind of affecting the overall sustainability metric and the carbon footprint in general. CHP, as I said before, is going to reduce your carbon footprint by 50% out of the gate, depending on where you're located. If you're trying to build a cannabis plant in West Virginia, well, 80% of your electricity that you get out of the wall socket is still coming from coal. If you're in other more progressive areas that have a high degree of renewables, it's still as much as 38 to 40% of a carbon impact. So by using natural gas, you can reduce that impact by up to 50%. And then if you do a true evaluation of your carbon footprint, which is site to source, and you account for all the losses in transportation, it's actually significantly higher. That's changing right now as how people look at your carbon footprint and how it's calculated. For the longest time, the green building industry, the commercial real estate industry has looked at carbon footprint within the box and basically doesn't account for how electricity gets into the facility. So they said, if you just electrify everything, you're cleaner. Yeah, but if all of your electricity is generated from coal, that doesn't really count. So you have to. I think the whole industry is actually reevaluating how they account for carbon footprint and look at sustainability. And then in addition, I guess on the sustainability scale, they also look at it as not just the energy sustainability, but also the whole environment, what you're doing for the community, how you're doing with job creation, all of those things that make the business a more sustainable member of the surrounding community.
Yeah, and one of the things that we did also early on in Jessup was we captured all of the effluent coming off of the tables. So all of the overwatering we captured, all of the condensation off of the dehumidifiers we captured, all of any of the water that was surplus, nothing was released into a storm drain or sanitary drain from plant operations. That is an expensive thing to do. You end up having a wastewater treatment plant on your site to be able to process and reuse that water and use less water from the street. But what we did was we wanted to create an environmentally tuned way to create cannabis. That didn't lower our cost to produce. It actually increased our cost to produce, or it made it different because we weren't buying as much water and we didn't have to pay for some of the mitigation of the wastewater off the operations. But the county recognized that we were an agricultural entity that actually released no effluent from operations to the county. And they thought we were outstanding in that regard. But it doesn't come simply. And we do all the other energy stuff too. I mean, those are the easier, bigger money lifts, is the efficient use of energy while expanding. But how you write that grant and how you demonstrate you achieved the savings that you were going to achieve or you plan to achieve was a huge undertaking that you need experienced guys like Chuck and his groups to help you plan, develop, prove those programs to be able to collect that free money that everybody loves to get.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're doing at KMB is and one of the reasons that I've moved over to work with them and to leverage their capabilities. They have a very, very strong group in sustainability, but also understanding the engineering aspects of it and being able to provide these types of services in every state in the country. It really brings a lot of horsepower to the service offering that Ingenix is bringing to the cannabis sector. So we're looking forward to working with these customers and helping them build these facilities out, because this is an exciting time. It certainly is the wild, wild west right now, that's for sure.
Anything else, gentlemen? I think we got through all the questions. These slides will be available. We did record this session, so we'll send the link out to all the participants after the webinar is over. Gary, Chuck, anything else, guys?
Now, I just want to thank everybody who participated today. Thanks, Ryan, for setting this up and inviting us to participate in this webinar. This is a very pertinent topic. There's a lot going on in the industry right now. If you look at the new licensees in New Jersey and in Missouri, the changes in the legislation that are coming in the Midwest and Kentucky, it's going to be a world of change and a whirlwind of opportunity for all of us. And I think whatever we can do to help all you folks that are out there, we're happy to do.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for joining. Everybody, thanks for joining and participating, and have a great day. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.